So I'm Nishant. I work as a UI designer at Frappe. A bit about myself. I contribute to product UI designs. I also work on landing pages, the HR website, which just launched. It was one of my recent works. Also the Frappe Desk website. I am also part of marketing and social media. I also do merch. So I hope you all are enjoying the stickers which we have this time. Also, I've extensively worked on Frappe design, Frappe desk. So I'll just, so at Frappe, we have a large team of engineers. We have consultants, PMs, and of lately, there has been more interest in design. So many people want to be a part of design in their own domain. So like many people are trying to make creations for social media and stuff. So I'll just be taking you through some good practices towards good design. I'll start with a quote by an ex-Googler, which says, "Good design is like a refrigerator. So when it works, no one notices. You only notice it when it doesn't, and that's when it stinks." So similarly, for example, on a mobile phone, you never notice the Wi-Fi indicator. You never notice the battery indicator until your Wi-Fi is not working or you're on low battery. So good design is something that is not, it's a lot harder to notice as compared to bad design, because that is when it sucks and that's when it comes to your notice. I'll show one example of bad design. I think some of you might be familiar with this screen. So this is the call waiting screen on iOS. So picture this, maybe you are talking to your friend on a call. Suddenly your boss gives you a call, and this is a screen which you see. You're firstly already going to panic because your boss's name is flashing on the screen. Next, you have like 5 different colorful buttons. In actuality, there are just 3 options. But this is something where you don't know what to do, and you might just maybe throw your phone and something. So this is quite a meme on Twitter. So you might see many people who have tried to give a workaround to this. This is one of them, where you just reduce the amount of colorful options that a person is giving. Thereby, it reduces the cognitive load which you get when you are on a call already. So one way to So one rule of thumb for good invisible design is to follow the 8-20-80 rule, which says that you should focus on 20% of the elements. That will give you 80% of the desired results in your product. So keep the elements which people are using more often. Try removing the elements which are not being used. This is one example of clean design, where suppose your goal is to search, what would you prefer more? There is Google and there is Microsoft Bing. Of course, you'll go with the one on the left, because the intent is very clear that you want to enter a search query and you want to get results. So on the option on the left on the right has a lot of different things which is not really necessary. There's news, there's the weather. Again, we are not completely comparing this because they are both different. I mean, Microsoft Bing is more like a portal, but it's just an example of where you should keep design to the minimum, where it's focusing only on the objective. So suppose this is a web page. How many elements do you see on this page? Suppose this is the hero section. How many elements would you say that you can see on the screen? You might say 2 elements. The one is the text, the headline. The other is the image. But apparently there's a third element, which is the white space. So white space is not necessarily the color white. It's just the space between elements. It can be any color. So white space is, I'll give you an example using a quote. So this is a quote by Mozart which says, music is not in the notes, but it's in the silence between. So if you have music without silence, it would be just noise. So as an example, these are two ads. You can see the one on the left, which has like very bold text. There's a lot of clutter, there's imagery, there's a big button. If you compare it to the one on the right, there's a lot of more white space, and it's more legible, it's more pleasing to the eye. So again, here, all of this white space is one of the invisible design elements. Moving on, we'll see something more invisible. If you are building a house, this is what people will see on the surface. But the foundation, which people cannot see, is, in terms of design, you can call it its scrap, but it actually stands for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So we'll start with contrast. So all of us have a general idea of what contrast is. It's basically the perceived difference between two colors. But good contrast also ensures good readability. For example, I'll take an example of Frappe desk. This is the ticketing view of Frappe desk. So when we initially launched, I'll just zoom it in. So the tickets which are closed, you can barely see them. Although while designing, we didn't really get to know this, but when we went to production, we had a lot of closed tickets, and all of these closed tickets were barely visible. So again, this is something that we fixed later on, because let's be real, I mean, everyone makes mistakes, even as designers. We try different aesthetics. Some things are aesthetically pleasing, but they are not functionally good. So there's another thing of how you can figure out the best contrast is what you call the contrast ratio. Is, for example, in this example, if you take the color code of the text, which is on the left side, there are many color contrast checkers online which you can use. So the color contrast in this example is 4.03:1. Now, I'm not sure if people have heard of this, but there's something called WCAG, which is called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's a set of compliance rules which ensures that your design is accessible to most people. So again, in this example, our text, it fails the level AA. It'll only pass if the text is large enough. So again, these are two levels in WCAG, where level AA, the normal text should be at least 4.5:1 ratio. Our text was 4.03, so it failed. Large text should be 3:1. So level AA is kind of more lenient. Level AAA is kind of, it's for people maybe with more disability, vision impaired. So here, normal text refers to something which is lower than 14 points. 14 points is around 8.6 pixels. 18 points is around 24 pixels. So again, when you're designing, it's not realistically, you can't make it accessible to everyone. But you should try making it accessible to people for whom your product is targeted at. Also, disability doesn't only mean you're targeting people, you're talking about people who have vision impairments. It can also be situational disability. For example, if you're using a product on a mobile phone, suppose you are using it while on the move, there might be like, your phone might be on 50% brightness. There might be a lot of sunlight on your phone, and that is when you might not be able to have the same clarity. And so that is when you have to ensure that your contrast and the colors are right. Another example of this would be for many devices go to night light mode after a certain time at night. So if your app or product is something that people use at night, you should also ensure that the contrast ratio is such that it's legible to people even in night light settings. So contrast is not just about what I just spoke about. It's also to avoid too much colors in the person's face and to not confuse them. So we try to keep positive actions more highlighted, and we try to keep negative options. For example, if you're having a delete button, unless it's really necessary, you can keep it just like a solid red outline. The next principle is repetition. So repetition ensures that the information on your website is organized coherently. It guides the audience in a certain way. So it teaches the best way how to interact with your website. And if your audience likes interacting with your website, they will stay on for longer. I'll take an example from ERPNext.com. So I'll just zoom in the page. Like you can see, we have this element, which is, you have an icon at the top. I'll zoom in more. You have an icon at the top. You have the title, and then you have the paragraph. So, this element is repeated a lot more often. So when a user finds this kind of repetitive pattern, they anticipate what they are seeing. You don't just keep introducing new elements a lot on your page. So this is when people will find it more comfortable to stay on your screen for longer. I'll take another example from Frappe Desk. So in this case, repetition is not something that you have to, it's not very strict. Sometimes you can, switch it around a bit. For example, here we have a zigzag pattern. So, the images are alternatively on the right and left. So, it makes the content less boring for people, and it still adds some visual flavor to it. Then next is alignment. Now you might think that alignment is just about text. The text should be aligned left, right, center, but it's more than that, and I'll explain with an example. For example, we have this play button, which everyone is familiar with. It's made of, you can say, an outline circle and a triangle in the center. Or is it really in the center? So if I drew a bounding box around it, you'll see that it's not really in the center. So this is what we call optical alignment. So, so the reason why you find it in the center is because the human eye perceives it in a way that there's more weight on the icon towards the left side, and there's less weight on the right side of the triangle. And that is why your eyes find that it is centered, while it's actually not. So if I were to move this and I were to actually center it, this is how it would look. So, so if you left design to computers and artificial intelligence, this is something that you would get, because computers don't really perceive things like humans do. And that is why, as designers, you should focus more on optically aligning things which look visually pleasing to the human eye, and not just selecting objects and just centering them. The next is proximity. So proximity is, for example, in this slide, you might, if I ask you how many, the first thing which you will see is that you might see that the symbols which you see are kind of grouped into 2 units. Even though there are 6 plus 6, which is 12 different elements, your eyes will still, the first thing you will see is there are two units. This is because your eyes kind of, they group objects together when you're viewing something on the screen. So your eyes will always see a composition of objects. And so how we use it in design is you keep elements which are related to each other more in proximity with each other. So in this example, you can see the statistics are far away from the text which is above. For an example, again, I'll take one screen from Frappe Desk. I'll zoom it in, the top left corner. So on this screen, you can see the labels and the values are closer to each other rather than being far. So a person, when they see, they know that the first response date is Sunday, and it's not what is written below it. The same also applies to labels for forms. So like you can see, there's more space between, in the second example, you can see there's more space between the select box of one input and the label of another input. So, this is again white space, so you know why white space is more important. The next is good design is not just about visuals. There's also another element which is good copy. So quite often the copy speaks for the design. And like you can see in this example, just simply adding one word can can improve the UX. So for example, if the person saw free trial, if they click on free trial, they're not sure whether it'll take them to a page which might give them more information about free trial. But if you just simply add a word, start free trial, that's when the intent is clear, that when the person clicks on the button, they are going to start a free trial. So to wrap up this presentation, I'll just share some 10 commandments which are by a German industrial designer called Dieter Rams, which he coined back in 1950. So one day he asked himself, is my design a good design? And that is when he coined these 10 principles. And this is something we strongly follow at Frappe. For example, good design is honest. Even in all of our designs, when design is honest, it doesn't manipulate the user into thinking something which it is not. Good design is long-lasting because good design doesn't follow a specific trend. So, if some trend is fashionable today, fashion goes, fashion dies over time. So good design is always timeless. And design is good design is as little as possible. So it's clean, it's minimal, and it's only functionally aesthetic. That was it. Thank you so much.